All right, number 43, the graph in figure A16 is the graph of what function? And we can see all the multiple choices. The equation is in standard form, not vertex form. So let's take a look. All right, so we see the parabola opens up. So that means A is positive. These are all in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. We can see in every answer that A is going to be 1. Okay, so we can't eliminate any choices there. And we can see the y-intercept is -1. That means if you plug in x equals 0, you should get the y-intercept at -1. And for all of these, if you plug in x equals 0, you get -1. Can't eliminate any choices there either. I think our best bet is just to find the vertex and write the equation. Alright, so if I'm looking at this parabola, this right here would be the vertex. And the coordinates for that vertex, x equals 1 and y equals -2. Alright, remember we call the vertex h comma k. Alright, and from the multiple choices, like we said, these are ax squared plus bx plus c. We can see in every answer that a is just 1. The coefficient on x squared is just 1. That's true for every one of these answers. Alright, so we have h and k, and we also have a equals 1. We can write the equation in vertex form and then convert it to standard form. Alright, so in vertex form, it's going to be y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Alright, a is just 1. We don't have to write 1 outside of the parentheses. X minus h is going to be x minus 1 squared, and then plus k is going to be plus -2. Alright, let's unpack this. X minus 1 times x minus 1, and we still have a -2 on the end. Distributing, x times x is x squared, x times -1 is -x, -1 times x is -x, -1 times -1 is +1, we still have a -2. Combining the likes, we have an x squared, x minus x is -2x, 1 minus 2 is -1. So that is your parabola equation. Answer A. (44) A biscuit recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of milk for each cup of mix. Find an equation that gives the amount of milk in terms of amount of mix. Okay, we can see the answers are linear equations. Y equals mx plus b. And when you write y equals mx plus b, you are writing y in terms of x. Alright, so they're saying the equation should give the milk in terms of mix. Alright, so y is going to be the milk in terms of mix. Alright, y is going to be the milk, the amount of milk, and x is going to be the mix, or the amount of mix. So basically the recipe, the amount of milk in the recipe, it goes up by 2/3 for each cup of milk, for each cup of mix. So each cup is going to be 1 cup. The mix goes up by 1 cup. when the amount of milk goes up by 2/3 of a cup. All right, so remember the slope. That's basically change in y divided by change in x, delta y over delta x. All right, we said y is the milk. So it's going to be the change in the amount of milk. That triangle is a Greek letter delta. It just means change. Over the change in mix. All right. So the milk goes up by 2/3 when the mix goes up by 1. All right. So that's just going to equal 2/3 for the milk, and the mix goes up by 1. So it's 2/3 over 1, or just 2/3. That's your slope, M. So if you were to write this equation, it's going to be y equals, the slope is going to be 2/3 x. And as far as the b, the y-intercept, if you had your graph like so, when you start with 0 cups of milk, it's also going to be 0 cups of mix. So you're basically just going to start at the origin. The y-intercept is just 0. All right, so this is the answer right here. This is the line equation. Y equals 2/3 x. That is answer B. Right, the y-intercept is 0 because you don't start with any of either ingredient. You start at 0, 0. $46, a museum offers group discounts for groups of 25 or more. For a group of 25, the ticket price is $13.50. For each additional person attending, the price drops by 50 cents. What group size maximizes the revenue? All right, so for revenue, that's going to be the price per ticket times the number sold. All right, so it says the ticket price, I'll do it in a different color here. It says the ticket price is $13.50. All right, so the price per ticket is going to be $13.50. But it drops for each additional person over 25. It drops by 50 cents. We're going to let each additional person, we're going to let that equal X. All right, so the price decreases. It's going to minus by 50 cents. For each additional person, X. And the number sold, it starts at 25, and then each additional person is X, so it's going to be plus X. All right, so this here is the price, and this here is the number of people, number of tickets sold. All right, we're looking to maximize, so we're looking to get a quadratic equation here. We're going to have to distribute this. Distributing $13.50 times 25, that's going to give us $337.5. And $13.50 times positive X, that's just 13.5X. Negative 0.5x times 25, that's going to be negative 12.5x. And negative 0.5x times x is negative 0.5x squared. All right, so I'm going to put the larger exponents first and also combine the like terms. So we have negative 0.5x squared. And 13.5 minus 12.5 is just going to be 1. But we have the x on it, so it's going to be 1x or just an x. And then 337.5. Alright, and as you can see, this equation is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Alright, and we can see a is negative. That means we have a parabola that opens down because a is negative, right? You can see that right here. That means if we find the vertex, that's going to be a max. All right, and that's what we wanted. They asked us what group size maximizes. All right, so we know for the vertex, the coordinates are h comma k. So let's start with the h. That's going to be negative b over 2a. Start with a negative, and b, we can see that is just 1. So it's negative 1 over 2 times a. We can see a is negative 0.5. Two times negative half is just negative 1. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. All right, you want to take that h and plug it in. You plug it in place of x. All right, so for the value of k, we're just plugging in the 1. All right, it's basically f of 1. So it's negative 0.5 times 1 squared. You could probably do this part in your head because it's all ones. And then it's plus 1. And that's plus 337.5. That's going to be, this is just 1. So it's negative 1/2 plus 1, which is 1/2 plus 337.5. That's going to be 338. That step may have actually been unnecessary. Let's look at the problem again. All right, what group size maximizes the museum's revenue? Well, this right here is h equals 1. And h is the x-coordinate for the vertex. So I think that's all we needed. Now they said what group size? So it starts with 25, but then it's 25 plus x. This right here, this part of the equation right here is the group size. So it's going to be 25 plus 1 because we got 1 for the x. And that's going to equal 26. And that is answer A. So this step here was actually unnecessary. 47, the graph in figure A17 is a graph of which function? Okay, they give us the answers in factored form. So really this is probably all we need. We don't even need this, I'm willing to bet. Remember when the zero goes right, when the graph goes right through the 0, for this one here, that exponent is going to be odd. However, when the 0 bounces off the graph and turns around and goes in the opposite direction, that 0 is going to be even. Alright, that wasn't in this book so far. We did that on Khan Academy. So this one here, see it goes right through. That one is also going to be odd. Alright, and remember for the zeros you change the plus minus sign. So this negative 3, all I'll write this out. These are the zeros. We have negative 3. This one here is negative 1. And this one here is positive 1. Now when you write out the factors, remember you have to change the plus minus sign. So the factor for negative 3 is going to be x plus 3. The factor for negative 1 is going to be x plus 1. And the factor for positive 1 is going to be x minus 1. The reason is when you set each of these equal to 0, you're going to get these values for the zeros. All right, if you set this, what makes this equal 0? Negative 3. What makes this equal 0? Negative 1, and so on. Okay, finally, the one for negative 3, the exponent is odd. The one for negative 1, the exponent is odd. All right, that's not a 0, that's an O for odd. And the exponent for positive 1 is even. All right, so let's look at the choices. X plus 3 and x plus 1 are both odd. X minus 1 is even. All right, and all of these, when there's no exponent, it's 1. And of course, 1 is odd. So for the x plus 3, all of these are odd, so we can't eliminate. For the x minus 1, it has to be even. So these two check out. These two do not. And finally, x plus 1, it has to be odd. So for all of these, the exponent is odd. Okay. So we do have to look at the shape of the graph, the end behavior, based on these two. Now, this one has x to the 4th. The exponent is even, and the leading coefficient is 1. That's positive. When it's even and positive, the graph basically is shaped like that. Now for this one here, the exponent is even and the leading coefficient is negative. It's negative 1. When it's even and negative, the graph is shaped like that. Alright, and we can see from this graph here, it's basically shaped like that. Alright. It's pointing down on both sides. So that is going to be answer B. So sometimes when you find the zeros and the even odd for the exponent, that's going to be enough. But in this case, we needed the other part of the equation for the end behavior. As a matter of fact, the part for finding the zeros was actually unnecessary. We really only needed the end behavior on this one. But for another one, you might need the zeros and the even odd on the exponent. 49, find the domain for 6 over x minus 8. Alright, pretty simple. The denominator can't be 0. Alright, x minus 8 denominator cannot equal 0. So that means x cannot equal 8. Alright, so it's going to run from negative infinity all the way to 8, but it's not including 8, so you use the rounded parenthesis. In union with not including 8, use the rounded parenthesis, and it runs all the way to positive infinity. So this right here, that means everything except 8. And that looks like answer B. Everything except 8. 50, are these functions f of x and g of x inverses? In order for them to be inverses, f of g of x has to equal g of f of x. And both of those have to equal x. Alright, so let's try that. First I'll do f of g of x. Alright, that means we take g of x. We take g of x and plug it in place of x in the f function. All right, so this right here is g of x. I'm going to take this right here and plug it in place of x in the f function. All right, let me see here. All right, f of g of x. We have 4 times x cubed. So that's going to be 4 times this mess right here to the third power. All right, so that's going to be the third root x minus 1 over 4 to the third power plus 1. All right, when you have the something to the third root and you take it to the third power, you're just left with that thing. All right, so it's going to be 4 times x minus 1 over 4. And we still have the plus 1. And of course 4 over 4 cancels. X minus 1 plus 1 is going to be x. So far it checks out. It will probably work. Usually if you get x for one of them, you get x for the other one. But you really have to do both. All right, let's do g of f of x. And what that means is you take f of x and you plug it in for x in the g function. All right, so before we went this way, now we're going the other way. We're going to take the f of x function, take that whole thing and plug it in place of x. All right, so we have the third root or the cube root. And in place of x, we're going to do 4x cubed plus 1. All right, I'll use parentheses for the x. And that whole thing is minus 1 divided by 4. Let's see. We have the cube root, and we have plus 1 minus 1, that cancels, and then we're left with 4x to the third over 4. 4 over 4 cancels, and we have the cube root of x to the third. The cube root of x to the third, just like before. When you have the cube root and you raise that to the third power, it's just going to be that thing. So the cube root of x to the third is just x. All right, so we got x for both of them. So they are definitely inverses. (55) Find the quadratic function with this vertex and this point on the graph. Okay, pretty easy. Or I should say we did one similar before. We know the letters for the vertex are h and k. H comma k. And if you have a point on the graph, any graph, doesn't have to be a quadratic. Those coordinates are x and y if the point lands on the graph. All right, so we can see all these answers are in vertex form. Even if they weren't, we could convert it. All right, but vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Now we don't have the value for a, but we can find it. All right, we're going to take all of these and plug it in. So y is going to be negative 15. That equals a. X is going to be a positive 2 minus h, which is negative 1. That whole thing is squared. And then plus k is going to be plus 3. That equals a. 2 minus negative 1 is 3. Two negatives in a row make it positive. 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. And that's plus 3. Alright, and if we do minus 3 on both sides, negative 15 minus 3 is negative 18. Bring down the equals. A times 9. 9 times A, same thing. 3 minus 3 is gone. Solving for A, the opposite of times 9 is divided by 9. I'm do that to both sides. Cancels here. Negative 18 over positive 9 is just negative 2. Alright, so A is negative 2. And that's really all we need. We can see right here, this one, A is negative 2. So that's it. You want to double check? Let's do so. Y equals A. We said A is negative 2. X minus H, so it's going to be X minus negative 1. Plus K, so it's going to be plus 3. The two negatives make it positive. So this should be the answer. And that's it. (61) Evaluate this for this function here. This right here is actually Newton's quotient. Okay, I won't write Newton's quotient on the test. I'll give you this actual formula. But this is the function right here. F of x equals 2x squared minus 1. So f of a is easy because you're just plugging in a in place of x. But f of a plus h, we might as well do that part separately. Alright, so if we do f of a plus h, that means we take a plus h and plug it in place of x for the f function. Alright, so we have 2x squared. That's going to be 2 times a plus h squared. Alright, we're plugging in right there in place of x. Minus 1. So we have to unpack this. It's going to be 2 times a plus h times a plus h. Minus 1. That's going to be 2 times distributing. A times a is a squared. A times h is ah. H times a is ah. And h times h is h squared. That whole thing is minus 1. Ah plus ah is going to be 2ah. And distributing the 2a squared. 2 times 2ah gives us 4ah. And 2 times h squared is 2h squared. And that's minus 1. Alright, and let's see. I'll do minus f of a in a different color. So I'm just going to leave this here. And let's see. I need to make more room. Let's see. We have this right here. And we also need f of a. So I'll do that separately. Alright, f of a. F of a just means we're plugging in a in place of x. So f of a is going to be 2a squared minus 1. Alright, so this f of a plus h, you subtract f of a. So we're going to subtract this. Alright, let's write it right underneath. So it's going to be minus, it's going to be minus 2a squared minus 1. So in other words, it's going to be minus 2a squared. And negative times negative is positive. Alright, so let's write it underneath. Minus 2a squared and plus 1. So what happens here? It cancels right here, 2a squareds and the 1's. And we're left with 4ah plus 2h squared. All right, the final step is to divide the whole thing by h. So if we divide this by h, it cancels. H over h cancels, and h squared divided by h is just h. All right, remember, when it's added or subtracted over a common denominator, you have to cancel on both. So that's going to be 4a plus 2h. Answer C. (64) The graph of 3f times x minus 4 is the graph of f of x. And here in the first half, they tell you if it shifts right or left. In the second half, it's vertically stretched or compressed. All right. This f of x minus 4, this right here, is basically your y value. Okay, and when you multiply y by a number greater than 1, that is a vertical stretch. All right, so this 3 right here causes it to be vertically stretched. If this number times the y was less than 1, that would be vertically compressed, okay, but that's not the case here. So the 3 makes it vertically stretched. Remember, when you add or subtract to x, it goes in the opposite direction. So minus 4 makes it go right 4 units. Okay, I know minus is to the left of x, but when you add or subtract to x, it's reversed. So that makes it go right 4 units. So it's not answer B. (67) What are the intercepts for this function here? All right, so they list x and y intercepts. The y-intercept is easier because for the y-intercept, that means x equals 0. So if we plug in x equals 0, it's going to be negative 0 squared plus 0 plus 2. All right, 0 squared is 0, whether it's negative or positive. Here's a 0, and we're left with 2. All right, so the y-intercept is 2. So we have this one and this one. Here it says negative 2, so it's not C or D. All right, so we did the the y-intercepts. Let's do the x-intercepts. For the x-intercepts, y equals 0. So that means this f of x, that's basically your y. This side of the equation is going to equal 0. So this whole thing is going to equal 0. We could go to quadratic formula, but see their x-intercepts, they're like integers. So I'm 99% sure we can factor this. All right, first step, this whole thing equals 0. First step I'm going to do is factor out a negative sign here. So I'm going to make it negative and then change the sign on all of these. This is positive x squared. This is going to be negative x. And this is going to be negative 2. And now we can factor this. The coefficient here is negative 1. So we want two numbers that multiply to negative 2 and add to negative 1. All right, if we write out the factors for negative 2, we have negative 2 times positive 1. And these right here, those add to negative 1. All right, so we have the negative sign And we're going to factor this mess in parentheses. We're going to make it 2 binomials equals 0. Alright, we're going to use -2 and -1. So it's going to be x minus 2 and x plus 1. Alright, either of these can equal 0 because anything times 0 gives us 0. So x minus 2 equals 0. And x plus 1 equals 0. Right here, x is 2. If you add 2 to both sides. Right here, x is -1. So that's it for the x-intercepts. +2 and -1. +2 and -1. Answer B. Alright, last one, 72. Finding the quotient for this divided by that. Alright, so it's going to be x plus 3 into this right here. Now remember, you got to count down on the exponents by 1. This is 3, 2, and there's no x. So you're going to have to insert a 0x. Alright, you can make it plus or minus 0x because 0 times x is 0. Alright, so that's going to be x plus 3 into 2x to the third minus x squared plus 0x plus 2. Now, if you're not sure which part of this goes on the outside, just think of grammar school math. Okay, let's say if you did 5 divided by 2, or 5 divided by 2, you would write it like this. How many times does 2 go into 5? Okay, so same thing here in case you ever forget. Just remember from grammar school. Anyhow, we could actually use synthetic division. I'll probably do that next, but here we're saying what times x gives us 2x to the third. Or you could say 2x to the third divided by x. And that's going to be 2x squared. Alright, distributing 2x squared times x. 2x squared times positive 3. It's going to be 6x squared. Subtract this whole thing. Alright, actually I think you've seen enough of this method, so I'm going to do this the synthetic way. Alright, so since we're dividing by x plus 3, the number outside the bracket is going to be a -3. Alright, and what you do is write the first, the coefficient for each one. You have to count down by 1, so we have it set up properly. Alright, this is going to be 2, -1. This is going to be 0, 2. Alright, so bring down the 2. And we're going to do -3 times that bottom row. So -3 times 2 is -6. And vertically we are actually adding. -1 plus -6 is -7. -3 times -7 is -21. 0 plus -21. -3 times -21, that's going to be positive 63. 2 plus 63 is 65. This one here, the exponent on this x is 1 less. It's going to be 1 less than the original. Alright, so this is going to be a 2x squared. And then count down by 1. Minus 7x, minus 21, and the remainder is 65. Answer A.